Welcome to Biztech's C-Suite Conversation Show. Today's guest is Andrew Harding, Chief Executive, Management Accounting at the Association of the International Certified Professional Accountants, so also known as the AICPA. The AICPA represents the AICPA and CIMA and advances the global accounting and finance profession through its work on behalf of 696,000 members, students, and engaged professionals in 192 countries and territories. Now, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be with you.
Now, Andrew, could you give us an overview of AICPA and CIMA?
Yeah, sure. This probably goes back a decade or more to two organizations wanting to change the accounting world and drive it for better. We started working together probably in 2010, formed an initial joint venture at the beginning of 2012, which I was delighted to be at the Asia launch in Kuala Lumpur for that at the end of January 2012. And in 2017, we formally brought the two organizations together to create the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, so that we pursued one strategy with a common staff, common resources to really support and transform the global accounting profession. Change is going on so fast at the moment. Both AICPA and CIMA were traditionally looked on as influential leaders in this space, and coming together as one. Really, there are synergies, and there is power that comes from that, and diversity of thinking that comes from that, which really adds value.
Now, Andrew, could you give us an overview of your key stakeholders and the kind of services that you provide your members and students?
Yeah, prime stakeholder is the broad accounting profession of the world. Amongst that, our members and our students. They are the sort of active stakeholders at the heart of our organization. But it goes beyond that. It goes into the employers and the firms which they work for and provide services to. It goes into governments, regulators, standard setters, and educators. So we have a broad piece that we service. In terms of what we offer, our crown jewels are the American CPA and our CGMA management accounting qualification, which are there for students to study for and to obtain. Going beyond that, we support them broadly in their careers through CPD offerings, through our global careers hub. Most importantly, recently has been the pace of change, the life cycle of a skill. Do you know now the average skill is reckoned to be relevant for 4 years, or the half-life of a skill is 4 years. I think that's what they say. So go back to 2013, only 25% of what you knew in 2013 is still relevant and useful today.
And is that true for the accounting profession as well, and the finance?
Yeah, very much so. We're going through a huge transformation. A lot of it driven by technology, but other things driven by what's going on in the reporting world. If we go back to the time when I started in the accounting profession, which was sort of 1980s. You could find 80% of a company's value reflected on its balance sheet. Today, less than 10% of corporate value is reflected on the balance sheet. We're going through a big reset in the way in which we do things. That's just the corporate reporting side of things. The other piece of it is around what finance is expected to do, around the mandate of finance in business. Finance used to be a scorekeeper.
Yes.
Nowadays that's not good enough. Finance has to be the storyteller. Finance has to make sense of what's going on in business. It has to join the dots. It has to be influential when it comes to decision making, and it has to create impact. Technology enables that. The role of a finance professional today compared to even 2010 is completely different. Expectations are so much higher. What is regarded as good is what was regarded as good in 2010 is regarded as the norm today. It's a given. Good today is all about how influential you are, how much impact you create in your storytelling.
And Andrew, so here's an interesting thing, and let's look at it from a CFO lens and the kind of skill sets that he or she really needs. And I'm going to take a cue from what you said in terms of 2010 and today. Today, the CFO, she probably needs strong understanding of technology. She needs to understand, besides the normal record keeping and just making sure that the numbers all add up. She also then has to make sure that all the compliance boxes are ticked, and she also is heavily involved in through using data from really then making strategic decisions on behalf of the organization, or basically advising the senior management team. How are we in terms of starting to cover the role of that CFO?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you a story about that. So I was speaking to a CFO of a global company, global listed company. It has significant operations in Malaysia and Singapore, as well as across the rest of the globe. And I was told then, I'm looking for 3 types of people. I'll take out the expletive he used, but he said, very good accountants is one type. That's to get the compliance right.
Yeah.
Second type, people who really understand business, because they've got to do the finance business partnering and do the influencing and decision making. The third type, people who really understand data, the power of data, how it can be used and how to deploy it. They don't have to be data analysts themselves, but they have to be able to manage the data analysts, or as he referred to it, they have to manage the geeks. Those are the 3 types of people that organization is looking for in its finance department. Things like managing IT, which 5 years ago we'd have gone, yeah, that's really, really important. That's another thing which is becoming commoditized and becoming a given, rather than becoming a differentiator for finance people. So, going through that, we revised our CGMA qualification. We announced it 2019. We first tested it 2020. We put digital at the heart of that, recognizing that digital was a given. We deployed a CPD program for all of our members, which we offered them free of charge, which we call the Digital Mindset Pack.
Okay.
And of our CGMA members, something like 75% of them have downloaded and used that pack to upgrade their skill.
Just for the benefit of our audience, CGMA is Chartered Global Management Accountant.
That's right.
Yeah. So you said how many percent of them downloaded the pack?
About 75%.
Okay, and what is in that pack? Because obviously then what you're trying to do as an organization is an association is really then ensure that you remain relevant and you evolve with the changing needs of accountants. So what's in that pack?
So that pack is all about what is going on in the digital world, how to manage digital, what are the current trends, what are the uses it can be deployed to, how do you manage digital, how do you manage technology? That's what it's all about. We have other stuff which people can use if they want to go deeper into the topic, but this enables people to be conversant with it, to understand what the opportunities are, and to access those opportunities and to drive those opportunities. So that's what it's about. It's about giving that first level of insight, which, if I'm going to be honest, would not have been in their qualification even 5 or 6 years ago. That's how fast things are moving. So if you think, hey, I'm 30 years old. I qualified when I was 24. I'm young and new to the profession. hey, you're not. Things have moved a lot in those 6 years. There's a lot to learn and a lot to keep up with. So that's the kind of challenge that we're addressing, and we're working with our members to support them through that change and to ensure they provide vital input to their businesses.
Okay, so Andrew, to do all that, your teaching and delivery methods have to have evolved, especially with the growth of online learning now. How is that working out for you in terms of working with online delivery methods as well as your learning partners?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's been accelerated, if anything, by the pandemic. If I was to go back to 2019, an awful lot of our learning from our members was face to face. We were doing some innovation in Kuala Lumpur. We ran what we call the Starbucks series.
And what was that about?
Oh, we would run learning sessions for members in Starbucks out of hours. Starbucks would open up, they'd serve coffee, and we'd have a learning session in there. It was a nice environment. A lot of members loved it. Great fun and a bit different.
And it's also good for networking. I mean, that's what this is all about as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But what we found happened during the pandemic, so February 2020, face-to-face stops. Everything moves online. We suddenly find that our face-to-face events would have been attended by 20 people. Our online events, the same events which we suddenly run online, are attended by 200. And those 200 people, if I'm running one in London, I'm not getting 200 people from London attending. I'm getting people from London, I'm getting people from Canada, I'm getting people from Europe, I'm getting people from Malaysia, from South Africa. And suddenly we've created an event which would have been very, very local, very, very restricted in terms of its access. Suddenly those events become global. So we've really revolutionized that, which changes the way in which we think about our communities. We now think we can build global communities rather than building local communities, which will help sharing and all kinds of other things. So that's transformed. It doesn't mean that as restrictions lift, we will never have groups of people meeting together. Of course we will. That's what people enjoy, that people like that. But we've also seen that things work in another way and people love doing it. We've changed what we do for our students as well. They needed to continue their careers during the pandemic. Their employers needed them to continue. They needed quality finance people like they've never needed them before. So between March and April and May last year, we did a flip. We moved all our examinations online. They were invigilated remotely, and to date, over the last 18 months, we've delivered almost 65% of our exams in that format, as opposed to more traditional exam centres. That was a really big change for us. We didn't know how that was going to go. It's very dependent on bandwidth and internet access, but we've been really pleased with how it's gone. As I say, 65% of our tests have been sat on that remote platform by candidates in their homes, and 80% of them have said that they would recommend that to others as their preferred way to continue. So as restrictions have lifted, we haven't seen candidates going back to traditional exam centres. We've seen them saying, actually, it's much more convenient for me to sit this at home using the laptop I'm familiar with. I don't have to travel. I don't have the stresses of wondering whether my train might break down or there might be a traffic jam. And it works really, really well. We're very confident in the security around it as well. There are things that suggest to us that the security around these remote invigilated exams is even better than traditional exam centres.
So how is that going to impact your relationship with your learning partners then? Because obviously there would be, because students are exhibiting signs that they prefer the direct and online method, as you just described, your traditional reliance on your learning partners will be reduced.
I don't think it's reduced. I think the relationship starts to change, because they're also moving their models online to match that student need. And what we find that they're able to do is give far more focused and bespoke support to the candidates, rather than pushing out what I would describe as perhaps commoditized learning. Commoditized learning, anyone can get. It can be accessed open source. It can, we have our own finance leadership program, which gives people that. What students have always valued about the traditional learning partners is that face-to-face support, that ability to have a problem unpicked and explained to them, that coaching, that kind of real value add. And that's going to continue. That's going to be driven even more than before. We see it in universities. Universities now have their lectures online, but they have specialist tutorials, which is where students really get value, really consolidate and develop their learning and their thinking. And that's going to happen with the accounting profession. It's going to be a better education process. It's going to produce better professionals. So it's not a lessening of reliance. It's a change in what people do. We're all changing and moving the way in which we organize our businesses.
And Andrew, I think that the studies show that they tend to agree with you, because blended learning is really the way to go. After all, as you said, there are some efficiencies in online delivery, but there is no shortcut for support, face-to-face support, as well as the interaction with peers, which then facilitates that whole learning experience.
But the interaction with peers is really interesting. There is nothing better to consolidate your understanding of a subject than to coach one of your peers through it.
Absolutely. And that's how I used to learn before, just to explain it to someone else, or as you said, coach them, and that clarifies your thoughts in terms of the subject matter.
Yeah, and it also it does more than that. It develops your communication skills, and for the workplace, that helps you in that need to be influential and create impact.
And Andrew, that's a really important thing that people often discount in terms of learning. The role of the accountant used to be the back office person. Today, articulating different things, interacting with teams are probably more important than they've ever been before, especially in order to advance your career.
Yeah, for sure. The CFO I referred to earlier, when he was describing the types of people he needed, he finished by saying, "And we all need to be better storytellers." we have a diagram we often look at which shows finance transformation, and it moves left to right. On the left, you've got collating and analysis of information. That's what people think of finance is all about. That stuff's being automated. That stuff is done by machines. It's done faster, more accurately than ever before.
Yeah, and the AI tools will replace a lot of that work completely.
They will, and that gives us a chance to get on with influencing and creating impact. Some of the leading businesses out there, some of the tech companies went through this transformation in finance several years ago. CFO with a global software company is saying, nowadays my finance staff are assessed on the impact they have on the business. They're not assessed on the accuracy of their reporting or anything like that, because that's been automated. They work within the business. They're welcomed in the business. They're no longer the person who says no. They're the person who tells people how. And that's where finance is. Huge transformation, and very, very fast transformation. Finance people say to you, "Oh, I don't like my job. I feel like a robot." The great news is you don't have to feel like a robot, because there's a robot that will do that for you.
And so, the conversation has also been around the fact that one of the challenge of automation of a lot of accounting processes that are traditionally, employed masses of people in third countries, in shared services centers and stuff. Those jobs are going to disappear. How do you think then that the jobs of the future for that level of people will evolve?
Well, that's an interesting one, Brian, and it's about how people learn, how people take up skills, and how they use and deploy those. Yeah, I keep on taking some reference points from the past. Again, if you go back to the 1980s, the most common job in the world was secretary, and that was when you had fewer women in the workforce in those days than you do today. Now, there are hardly any people that perform that role. That role has largely disappeared, but we have many more women in the workplace with different skills who are deploying them. So that thing about jobs do change, jobs do go, and people do different things. They add different values to things. And I think in many ways it's an opportunity. If I talk to shared service leaders in somewhere like India, they will say, actually, automation is a costly thing to do. There are some processes which are not worth automating, and therefore those will continue to be manual processes. So it's not a binary type decision. There's some subtlety involved in it, and so those processes which remain manual, people will still look at ways to make them more efficient, more effective, in a way in which shared services centers have been doing for the last 20 years.
Now, Andrew, sustainability has changed the business landscape, and recently you welcomed the creation of the new International Sustainability Board, and that's a means of developing consistent, reliable, and really comprehensive global standards. Could you tell us more about how you are involved in this and how the profession as a whole needs to evolve?
Yeah, this is all about how much corporate value is reflected in the traditional balance sheet. We see it's reflected in much more that the organisation does and contributes, and increasingly governments, shareholders, other stakeholders have said, we need to know and understand more about your business. A lot of this is driven by sustainability. Sustainability reporting has been something which has been, it's been going on probably for 30 years or more, but it's really now a focus. We've seen it at COP26 and other things. A year ago, there were over 200 organisations across the world that purported to be some sort of standard setter or influencer of standards around sustainability, or around what we more broadly call ESG. What we have done and been working to do is to try to get that down from 200 plus to 1. In creating the ISSB, we have brought together four of the largest and most influential of those organizations, and put them together in one place at the center of global standard setting. That gives us a chance. If this is going to be information which is useful to investors, information which is useful to regulators, information which is useful to businesses, it needs to be comparable. People need to understand what they're looking at. We need to, a little bit like we went through with accounting standards in the past. We have to bring these things together so that there's common understanding. Otherwise, if you can't compare data, it loses value very quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, that comparability is key. Also, the whole idea of benchmarking. So when you've got one standard, everyone can work towards that standard.
That's absolutely right, and that's what we want to see. That's what we need to see. We need to see that. We need to see that happening. We need to see that happening quickly. Yeah, as an organisation, we've been at the core of that. We certainly believe that AICPA on its own or CIMA on its own would not have been able to act as the convener we feel we've been able to act as in making and assisting some of this to happen. You know, we're not the only players in it, but we do believe we played a key role in driving this forward.
Now, Andrew, it's been a fascinating conversation. You have really outlined how the organization has really shifted, particularly during the pandemic. What are your plans moving forward?
Well, you know, big plans and big ambitions moving forward. But primarily, Brian, it stays around that supporting the profession through transformation. You know, it's going to be what we have seen is nothing. What do people say? You know, the pace of change will never be as slow again as it is today. Yeah, and at the same time, yeah, we have commentators telling us that over the last 18 months we've gone through 7 years worth of change. So you know, our mission is driving the accounting profession through that change, ensuring that business is supported, ensuring that capital markets are supported, and ensuring that we continue to provide trust, opportunity, and prosperity.
Andrew, it's been really an educational conversation with you. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show.
It's been great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Andrew Harding, Chief Executive, Management Accounting at the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. This video and podcast will be on our various social media platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.